Pour something flammable into your glass. It's Jaded Gamercast. My name is Lang. With me, as always, is Nathan. Nathan, I'm drinking another homemade old-fashioned. What are you drinking tonight?
I have half a bottle of wine that the wife left in the fridge from when she was cooking with wine. And then I have...
So Pinot?
Yeah, right. It's just a white blend.
Ugh.
And I have a beer. I'm going to see if it fucks me up the way it has since my gallbladder came out. We'll see. Listen, I am the designated grocery shopper.
Yep, me too.
And we have our grocery stores can sell liquor here. So that's why I was going around and I was shopping hungry. And instead of buying junk food, I bought beer, knowing it has literally hurt me every time I've tried to drink it since I had my gallbladder removed. But I'm like, maybe not this time. I bought one because you can buy singles at the grocery store. So I'm like, I'll buy one and I'll see.
Yeah, I drink a lot of cider and whiskey, and that seems to be my go-to. Is I'll make a whole lot of different mixed whiskey drinks and like a apple pie moonshine drinks, and then if I don't feel like drinking hard shit, I'll drink cider, and that's generally the rotation that I go on. But hey, welcome back, everybody. It's been a while since the last podcast, the Fight for the Worst, where we argued and debated which Legion was the worst. And we got a bunch of stuff we're going to talk about today, but we're going to open with this one. So, Nathan, before I announce who the worst is, how do you feel you did?
Listen, I had the most uphill battle, I feel, of all of them, because as we discussed in our episode, the go-to heel to just twirl their mustache with the stupidest of plans were the word bearers. With that being said, I'm still gonna be hopeful that Dark Angels take it because they're just so dumb.
I mean, I hit the Dark Angels pretty hard. I felt very good about my arguments. I knew I was going to lose Worst Homeworld from the start. It was just one of those things where like I put in a bunch of stuff where I was like, listen, this could go either way. And the way people vote in this community, this group of listeners, who the fuck knows what my argument is going to do. So that one fell flat about as much as I expected it would, but all the rest of them I felt pretty confident. I felt like I made good points and was very much on the attack against both of you. And I felt like I hit Matt harder than I hit you. Because to be perfectly honest, I genuinely don't like the Dark Angels a lot. So, yeah, I mean, you brought up some really good points that I had not considered. And in a few places, I was like, that's a good argument. But it was the most uphill battle, which is why you lost by a vote.
One vote. That's not bad considering before the episode, word bearers were the worst by a goddamn landslide.
Yeah.
Like I think it was like, what was it, like 27 to second places, like 13. Like they were getting hammered.
But that said, all those people who voted for like Iron Hands and voted for Salamanders and voted for all of these other chapters got a chance to vote for these three, and it was pretty much down the line. So both of the 5 topics, Imperial Fist lost the one, and then 2 to Dark Angels, and then 2 to Word Bearers. So at that point, I was just adding up the total number of votes, and it was 36 to 37, with the Word Bearers being the worst Legion of all time, agreed upon by the listeners of this podcast. And I mean, I can't disagree necessarily. They're pretty damn bad. They wouldn't even crack my bottom 3 though. Like that's sort of where it is for me. That was why it was sort of hard to hit them as hard as I was hitting the Dark Angels.
Yeah, because like I said, they don't crack my bottom 3. They're probably top 50% for me. I know when I was laboring over like which 30k Legion do I want to just like putz around as, because I have a Legion that like once a year I'll just be like, I feel like painting some Space Marines, and I'll just like do up a unit for them. And they were in the running for which one did I want to do, because just, you know, from an aesthetics perspective, you know, the red armor, the free hand on, you know, with all the Colchizian runiform, just to go back to being a condescending twat. All of the freehand of like the Book of Lorgar on their armor and being able to throw in demons. Like it's a cool looking army. And if you just want to have something different, they'd be fun. So like I said, they were seriously in the running for my like part-time, will literally never play a game of this, but it's fun to dick around with.
Right.
Project.
I find like Lorgar is the underdog for me. And so I like him. I like that he's a failure. Like I find him oddly enjoyable in his failure. You know what I mean? Whereas when the Lion's bombing around, there's really not much to say about the Lion. He's just an asshole who kills his own troops. He's worse than some of the Chaos Legion Primarchs. Now, that said, I like the word bearers.
He's a huge asshole, but he's always written where it's just like, and the Dark Angels are the greatest,
That's right.
First amongst equals. And so it was always frustrating to read funny. Dark Angels books.
What are the Dark Angels texts? They're just good. They're good at everything. They've got a squad and it's good at everything. I always find that the word bearers are really interesting, and I think that's what makes them a really fun chapter to sort of follow along with, is that they're very, very interesting. Yeah, they're cowards. Yeah, they're fucking idiots. Yeah, they genuinely fail at everything that they do, but they're interesting. You can't say they're not interesting. They're not out there trying. You can't say they're not out there trying to do something different. But I mean, all things considered, I do have to side with the total number of votes. I think that by the time the arguments came down to it, I think I weighed it pretty much the same way as everyone else did, in terms of like where the votes would go and sort of how it went down. But it was fun. It was just fun to like watch you and Matt get progressively more and more drunk and like be utterly unable to control your outbursts during this debate. Somebody couldn't get 3 words in before you're like, oh, because they're this, and this is what I hate about both of you. And this is why I was like, fuck the rules. We're going to do it this way. Oh, man, what a shit show. Oh, well, let's move on to some of our topics for today. We have 3 in particular. We've got 2 sort of movie and television topics that we're going to do, as well as some D&D stuff. Nathan, which one do you want to talk about first? Which one's near and dear to your heart?
Oh, see, let's get salty first, and we'll talk about the second one, because that is... I think we both have things to say.
Oh, yeah, I have no doubt. So that's the Snyder Cut of Justice League, coming out on HBO Max in 2021. For those of you who don't know, Justice League is a giant shit show. It's a horrible movie done very, very poorly by 2 completely different directors, both trying to do something completely different. It suffered from terrible production hell. It suffered from insanely bad CG during certain parts of the film. It suffered from reshoots. It suffered from actors sort of losing any involvement in the movie or any like love for the movie. It suffered from color palette changes. It suffered from joke changes, tone changes, story changes. It went closer toward the comics and then further as fuck away from the comics as it could possibly fucking go. And because it was so bad, and there were a lot of people out there, I'm pretty sure you were probably included in it, Nathan, who are DC fans, who are really fucking excited for this movie. I mean, they were fired up for this movie and also defended the shit out of it after they saw it. I remember Terry posting on Facebook about what a wonderfully well done movie it was. And so there was some salt. There was some salt in the wounds.
I mean, like, listen, I am a DC fan, but I don't think at any point I was ever excited for Justice League, because as I have pointed out, the reason Avengers worked is they put in the time to build it up and set the stage. And the reason I was not excited for Justice League, I mean, first of all, it's coming out after Suicide Squad, so we already know they can't do an ensemble cast movie. No. And secondly, they did literally none of the time to set it up. So, imagine Avengers where they had to introduce everyone but Iron Man. Where, and like that, again, so it's just like, I can say that I was not excited, but I totally get what you're saying. The Justice League is probably the most iconic supergroup in the world. Let's be real. Most people, even if you're not comic book readers, if you couldn't tell me who a single Marvel or DC character is, can probably name the Justice League.
Sure.
So yeah, it's super exciting, but good God, Warner Brothers knows how to ruin things. So I was not looking forward to it.
You remember when they first released the trailer for this, and that trailer came out, and it was short. It was a bunch of cuts. It had bits and pieces of the movie in it, and everybody sort of stopped and went like, "What the fuck was that? Like, what are they doing in this movie?" Like, it was confusing, and it didn't look good at all. And there was this massive length of time that went by before they eventually released another trailer where the tone had changed quite significantly. The color palette had changed, and they showed you a little bit more of the movie. Now, what's crazy about these two trailers is that there is an enormous amount of footage in these two trailers that does not appear in the movie. And when I say an enormous amount, I mean like 60-70% of these trailers do not appear in the final cut of this movie because this movie went through such dramatic reshoots. So the Snyder Cut is a sort of like the fans' wet dream of the original movie that was totally gonna be good.
But it's funny because you're right. That's exactly what it was. And for those of you that don't know why there was a director change, and I'm not going to shit on this because this is fucking horrible.
No, it's fucked up.
Zack Snyder's kid committed suicide and during production, and he just couldn't fucking deal with that. And like I said, it's a fucked up, super shitty situation. So he bowed out of the project. And then Warner Brothers was just like,
in their infinite wisdom,
because these are like truthfully, I believe that Warner Brothers movie studio have the worst movie executives in Hollywood.
Yep.
Bar none. They were just like, hey, Joss Whedon made the Avengers a hit. Let's bring him on. And to your point, these could not be two more different directors. At the end of the day, you have Zack Snyder, who is way more focused on recreating visual scenes from comic books. And you can see this throughout all of his work, including stuff that's not based on comics. He is a more visual storyteller, and Joss Whedon is a more character-driven storyteller. And so they literally were just like, let's pick two different, completely diametrically opposed and opposite directors. Yeah. And hey, Joss, you've got to finish shooting. These are all of Zach's notes. Finish it up. Also, you're going to be editing it because Zach was going to be editing it as well. So let's cut it together. And that's why, again, it just kind of was a mess.
Well, and now what's kind of crazy about this is I like both of these directors, and I often catch heat for saying that I like Zack Snyder, but I do genuinely like Zack Snyder. And you could sort of see a lot of his personality in this. Now, he is very focused, like you said, on reinterpreting the comic books, but also his own artistic interpretation and his own like very heavy-handed messages in the movies that he makes. And he likes to send a message. He likes to shoot as artistically as possible. It's his like primary focus when he's doing these things, which is why he likes the comics as much.
Visual look of a scene.
And he also, he shoots a very serious movie. Like, this is the way that this guy, he doesn't do comedy. He doesn't do like really good, funny dialogue. He doesn't keep things light. This isn't the way that this man makes movies. And then when you bring in Joss Whedon, I absolutely agree with you. This was the Warner executives going, hey man, why don't you come in here and make this? And then they go, there's a thing about Zack Snyder. He really doesn't like to listen to studios. And this is true. If you know anything about Zack Snyder, he will tell like studio execs and producers to go fuck themselves because he doesn't want to change what's going on in the movie. So he's going to make this dark superhero movie. And I'm sure Warner Brothers are like, just make a Marvel movie, please. Like, just if you could just fucking tone it down and like a couple of giggles, like we're trying to make some money here. And he's trying to make the movie he wants to make. So they bring Joss Whedon in, and he's been working with the mouse. So he's more than happy to make a funny movie. But trying to put those two movies together is just a fucking shit show, because you've got just a completely fucking off the wall whack job list of writers involved in this, and then two completely polar opposite different directors. Not to mention the fact that actors had to come back for reshoots on short notice almost a year later. And I mean, you can look at this movie and you can tell which scenes are reshot because Ben Affleck doesn't have a beard and is 50 pounds overweight. Right. In the first part of the movie, he's CrossFit, he's clean, he's ready, he's in it, and you can see that he's on board. And then all the reshoots, he looks tired, coked out, and dealing with a divorce. That's what this man looks like in every single one of these scenes. But what's equally fucked up about this is that neither of those two directors built off of anything that was done in their previous movies. What was done in Wonder Woman, they didn't build off of that. They said, well, it wouldn't be sweet if the Amazons were wearing less clothing and they fought in halter tops and, they look like a bunch of strippers.
Which, let's be real, was 100% a Zack Snyder
100%.
Because you have some of these same actresses wearing their costumes from the original Wonder Woman movie and they look great. And then they're standing next to like bitches in bikinis. And you're just like, God fucking damn it. But like you're totally right. They absolutely don't. And like as I'm sure you are tired of hearing, I like to watch a lot of like film studies style YouTube videos and breakdowns and stuff like that.
I have one I'm actually going to send to you afterwards. I think you'll really like it. It's not a very popular YouTuber, but she does a really good job of breaking down Rogue One.
Oh, interesting.
And I think you would love it.
Probably. But like one of the ones that I have watched recently recently-ish, was talking about how the problem with Zack Snyder's superhero movies is that Zack Snyder's favorite properties are these critically acclaimed, dark, critical looks at the nature of superheroes and sort of the abuse of power. And you saw that in Batman v Superman because he basically pulled from the two most iconic 1990s sort of like dark universe looks into DC with the death of Superman as well as the Dark Knight Returns. And he just tried to like mash and cobble those two together. And it just doesn't work when you're creating a universe. Like, listen.
Well, it doesn't work based on the movie he previously made. Like he made Batman v Superman, where Superman dies at the end, but we see like the dirt lifting up off of his coffin because he's coming back to life. And then they're like, oh no, he died. Yeah, he died. That was nothing. No. That was like a bulldozer or some shit. Like if you can't even pick up where you yourself left off, you're already off on the wrong foot. You're already deciding that the continuity that you yourself created doesn't matter. Like it's baffling.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So kind of pulling this back around to the Snyder Cut.
Oh, yes. I didn't even think we were going to go there yet. I was
No. Listen, because we could spend the runtime of Justice League shitting on Justice League and all of the reasons why it's bad. But like kind of going around, I find this movement and this everything just kind of fucking laughable. And yes, it's coming out next year because they have to do all the special effects and the computer generated shit and they'll push it out on HBO Max. But like when you look at Man of Steel, this is a flawed movie with a couple of really great moments. Again, Michael Shannon, scene stealer.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You look at Batman v Superman. This is an indie movie. And we have just let's be real. This is the highest budget indie film ever fucking made.
Okay.
But like again, it fell flat. It wasn't critically well received. It wasn't financially well received. And these two movies are Zack Snyder's vision. So why does anybody think that the third movie that's even more cobbled together, because again, we got to get in on that sweet Avengers action without doing any of the work, so that way it's all payoff with no build. Sure. Why does anybody think that this person who has delivered two, at best, mediocre movies, and I say this still loving Batman v Superman, like I enjoy that movie because
we like Zack Snyder.
I like Zack Snyder, and as we have discussed, It is spec null to the comics I read growing up as a kid.
Uh-huh.
So, why
Well,
do we think that the person who's struck out twice at bat is going to hit a home run on the third try? And this is the thing, and it's going to prove it. Because the other thing is let's pretend
sure.
that it's exceptional. What does that mean? It means that some movie
It means that hindsight is
executive
2020 is what it means.
Well, no, what it means, like, if the Snyder Cut is fucking exceptional, what it means is that some movie executive decided to release an inferior product. And it means that Joss Whedon, how many countless professionals who do this for a living signed off on the theatrical release. They did the best work that they were capable of doing. They all signed off and said, this is the best movie that we can make.
Oh, I don't even think that was the case, because even the actors said that it was rushed. They were rushed to the deadline. That was part of the reason why they weren't willing to wait for Zack Snyder to come back from his leave from the movie, because they had to get it out before the next Marvel movie. Like they had to, because they knew that they would get crushed at the box office if they got delayed. That's why they went with Joss Whedon. That's why they went with the changes that they did.
But my point is, no one, even if it is rushed, this was still the best they could do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so
it's so fucking bad.
This is the best that we can do. We already know that we're getting an inferior product because a fuckload of professionals looked at it and said, this isn't the right answer. Like, this isn't good. This isn't right. This isn't correct. This isn't whatever. And so that's why I'm like, even if the Snyder Cut is exceptional, do people lose their jobs over it? Does the executive that signed off on the fucking theatrical release, does he lose his job? Does fucking Joss get a black mark? Does all of these things? And that's why I'm just like, we already know it's going to be shit, guys. Not even talking about the fact that he's got 2 strikeouts. We already know that a bunch of people that do this for a living looked at every last bit of footage and cobbled together the best possible movie they could from it. And we've already seen it. So we already know that the Snyder Cut will be worse than this, because this was all cut for a reason.
Yeah. Well, and I think that I have a different view on it as a whole, because the thing about the Snyder Cut is it's been a joke for years. It's been like a running punchline. It's this made up unicorn that everyone has been talking about, because they know that all of this film existed on the cutting room floor. It was filmed, it was put into editing, and then it wasn't used due to reshoots and due to story changes after the fact. And so, there was an original story that Zack Snyder and his team had worked on, and then it was replaced by a different story that was run by the Warner writing team. And I don't know if Joss came in with a writing team, but essentially what ends up happening is that this thing becomes so much of a meme. And we know how memes work when we talk about like movie executives and like television executives and marketing people, is that 5 years after the meme has run its course and there's no negativity associated with the meme, like it's not like associated with alt-right or anything like that, you know what I mean? Then they're like, it's safe, we can do something with it. So let's put Chuck Norris into fucking World of Warcraft ads. You know what I mean? Like, this is why this is what it is it's a joke. It's like dabbing. Did you ever hear the story about how dabbing came around? How it became popular?
No.
Okay, so, and this is going to play into it, but it's a funny story, and it's sort of what this all comes around to. So ATL rappers, they have a long storied history of coming up with dance moves or slang or something, hoping that it will catch. So every song will have some sort of slang, catch, dance move, something that they hope is going to skyrocket them into fame, right? And dab was one of them. And I'm not gonna repeat the song that it's in because it's just the worst. But they created dabbing, and it was immediately dismissed as stupid. But you know who loves stupid rap? Nerds on the internet. And so nerds on the internet picked it up and they started doing it ironically because it's fucking hilarious. So they started dabbing and they started doing all this stuff. And it was dab, 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 dab. And it suddenly rose to stardom. And then rappers started picking it up again because they're like, oh my God, it got popular. How did this happen? And then everyone's dabbing and it's everywhere and Ellen's doing it and so on and so forth, not knowing that the reason why it's popular is because it's fucking stupid. And good God, we love stupid shit and we love to do stupid shit, sad keks and Pepe hands and so on and so forth. Like, this movie is a meme. This Snyder Cut is a meme that has been propagating for years through convention circuits and through movie channels and through all of these things. Honest Trailers did a fake honest trailer for the Snyder Cut of this movie, and it's fucking hilarious. It's so damn funny. And again, that's the thing, is nobody thought this would ever happen because it's such a stupid idea, but it becomes a meme. And some executive hears about it and somebody goes, hey, this is really popular. People really want this. This is a movement. And you're like, maybe to like 1,000 people total, but you're never going to make your money back on that. So they say, hey, look at all of these, hashtag Snyder Cut tweets. Look at all these hashtags, man. Let's make a deal with HBO. And HBO goes, that's a lot of hashtags. Yeah, let's make a deal. And they start dumping money into this thing. Even if it's good, it's not going to make any money. It's going to get pirated. Nobody's going to get HBO Max for this shit.
No, they're definitely not going to subscribe for it. To me, it just, like, from HBO's perspective, they're just trying to fill that giant Game of Thrones sized dragon hole in their wallet. So it's literally just like, let's just throw money at everything and see what fucking happens. Because, again, God forbid, it's great. It makes a ton of money. How many other fucking movie, like, alternate cuts are we going to get out of this? And well, so,
speaking of other movie alternate cuts, let's talk about George Lucas. Right? Is this a case of George Lucas? Is this a case of Zack Snyder going, I didn't get to make the movie I wanted to make? People appreciated Man of Steel. They appreciated Batman v Superman. It didn't matter if they were critical flops. So was Watchmen, right? He's going to make the movie he wants to make. And to see your movie get twisted into what it was, maybe that's just too galling. Maybe he's the guy behind the scenes going, that Snyder Cut would have been bomb. Like, maybe that's what it is. And he's now getting to recreate his dream. And if it is one man's dream, I mean, good God, like you said, he struck out twice. I don't see how he hits it out of the park on the third one.
Yeah, no, and neither do I. So, I mean, like, yeah, am I going to watch it? Probably not.
Oh, I'm 100% watching it. And so are you. So are you. I'm telling you right now you're watching it because we are going to have a follow-up episode about it in 2020 if we're all still alive and or podcasting.
I was going to say, fine. Because, like, listen, there have been good DC movies come out. All, I will point out, after Warner Brothers announced that it was all a flop and these are the only movies coming out because they were too far in production that, like, fuck it, we'll just release it. And they stopped meddling. And then what did we get? We got a fun as fuck Aquaman. Yep. And we got Shazam, which is
it's fine.
The best DC movie they've made. It was funny. It had heart. Like, it was fun.
I think it's still a tie between Wonder Woman and Man of Steel for me as like the best one, because I think Man of Steel had a lot going for it. It was just too long and there was too much nonsense going on. But all things considered, it was a well done movie with good acting and like a pretty okay story, but like top notch action for the time. I think Wonder Woman, the thing for me that sort of sets it back a little bit is that there's like a whole section in the middle, like from the middle to the end of the movie, that's just nonsensical. And it gets really hard to enjoy, but like it starts great and it's entertaining and it's fun. And Aquaman was just fun. I mean, I have a lot of problems with Aquaman. Don't get me wrong.
Listen.
Listen. I love crabs that speak with Scottish accents. I love that. I don't know. Put that in your movie. I'm on board. Okay.
Aquaman is literally the embodiment of a summer blockbuster. Turn your brain off, enjoy it. It's a visually pleasing movie. The jokes land. The pacing is good. Is it a good movie. No, just don't think about it. The more you think about Aquaman,
Yep.
the more you're just like, you know what I really want to see instead of this movie? The like 3 minutes of horror movie, because James Wan is a horror
Oh
director
yeah.
that he
When they go to
snuck into
the
the
deep,
middle. Yeah, with the deep. I
the
was like,
deep was great. That
I
was
just
when
want
that movie
more of
picked the
that.
fuck up. That was when that movie got good.
Oh
Everything up
yeah.
to that was sort of like meandering, mildly entertaining, but kind of boring in a lot of places. But like when you hit that part, you're like, this shit is on. And then they ride it all the way to the end of the movie. Getting back to the Snyder Cut, though, I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
Interesting points of conversation. One of the things that people complain about the Justice League more than anything is the atrocious CG and the really, really bad reshoots, especially with Henry Cavill and his ridiculous upper lip. And, you know, all of that stuff is not going to be in it, right? I would be very surprised if they used any of the reshot material. Given what this is supposed to be, I think having any of the reshot material in there would be sort of like a clear indication that they're really not behind this whole Snyder Cut reshoot thing, right? Not to mention that the story would be different. And I mean, the story for Justice League was equally bad. It was just terrible. And it's like, well, is there a better story? So with those two things there, it's like, well, we already know we're going to be removing one bad component. And we're going to get another shot at possibly something that might be good and entertaining. Not to mention that without the heat of the summer blockbuster money behind it, where it's like, we're just doing this on a smaller scale. We're releasing it digitally through HBO Max. Does Zack Snyder get more freedom to do what he wants to do with this movie? And does that make it a better movie? It's hard to say. I have problems with the structure of the franchise, as you pointed out before, being that they've done none of the work and they want to reap all of the benefits. And I just don't know if there's any way to fix that with, essentially giving us what the original movie was. Is it going to be equally as long? Is it going to be longer? Is it going to be shorter? You know, I get the impression it's probably going to be shorter.
See, but Zack Snyder doesn't make points quickly, so I was actually going to say it'll probably be longer.
I mean, that's always a possibility. Actually, you make a good point. There's probably like 6 hours of footage in the Snyder Cut that he's going to use like 5 hours of it. I don't know. Like, I just don't know. I don't think they're going to make money. I don't think it's going to be good. I don't think it's going to be a critical hit. I think it's only going to make Warner Brothers look bad. And the problem with Warner Brothers is that they have said publicly, or at least a lot of people, insiders have said that like they're one bad film away from going bankrupt. Like this production company has been on the razor's edge for like 10 years. And the Batman movies were the only thing keeping them alive. And then when they started up the Superman movies,
Harry Potter, man.
Well, Harry Potter.
Harry Potter is the only bankable commodity they have right now.
But they don't have any of that stuff anymore. They don't have the DCEU. They don't have Harry Potter. You know, like the Fantastic Beasts movies aren't keeping them afloat right now. They're definitely not making the money they need to be making. The last one certainly didn't. So I think this company is just looking for any sort of income. And this appears to have popularity. They don't know that it's a meme. They don't know that it's a joke. They just think that those hashtags mean something. As they look at those numbers and they go, this is big. I'm so excited for it. It's going to be such a fucking train wreck. I can't wait. And I can't wait for the YouTube videos where people just get to compare the two movies and talk about like, how did you not know to not do this? Like hindsight is 2020 and you still fucked it up. I'm incredibly excited for it.
Prediction. After it bombs, we'll have like a hashtag release the Whedon cut where it's like, what if Joss just got to do it start to finish? And they'll just keep milking the footage they've already had.
Oh my God. Well, and I mean, we know Warner Brothers likes to double dip. You know, they like to, hey, we're just going to release another version with a couple minutes more footage. And yeah, we'll just release it again here and there because they need income. Like they're desperate for income. And this is something that this company is sort of floating on right now. And this is still one of the biggest IPs they have under their belt, without a doubt. You know, they're talking about the new Batman movie, which everything I've seen and read about makes me want to giggle. But I think it was what's his name, Skarsgård from True Blood. I think he's in it as well, and he was like, this Batman movie is gonna like, it's not holding anything back. It's gonna be completely raw and unsanitized. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, is Batman going to get raped in this? Like, what do you mean? Like, what is this movie studio doing? But the weird thing is that they'll release something like Joker, which neither of us saw because fuck that movie. I have no interest in it whatsoever.
Nope. Listen, I subscribe to Crave. I just got the email. They're like, it comes out. You can watch it on Crave. I'm like, even for free, I will not watch that movie.
I've watched a few clips at the behest of friends of mine who have assured me it's worth my time, and it is awful. Everything I've seen is awful, and I don't like it. I'm sure it's a good movie. People like it. It made ridiculous amounts of money, but they see these movies and they go, yeah, that's how you make superhero movies. Like that, like 1 in every 20 movies like that works. It doesn't work as like your entire universe. And especially, like, for fuck's sake, stop making prequels. God damn, like, stop making these stupid fucking standalone prequels. I don't give a shit. As a comic fan, I don't give a fuck. I know how the Joker came about, and he wasn't a guy with laughter Tourette's. Like, that's not what it is.
Well, again, no, you're absolutely correct. And part of the mystery of the Joker is that no one actually really knows how it gets started. But according to the canonical now timeline of this movie, every time you see Batman punch the Joker, he is literally committing elder abuse.
That's right. Yes.
Because of the stupidity that is that movie. No, and to one of the points. And I think this is the starkest thing. What you said, you can't have a whole universe built on this dark, edgy shit. At the end of the day, when Superman died at the end of Batman v Superman, did anybody care?
No.
You watched the movie. Did it have any emotional resonance with you after seeing him in 1 and a bit movies? Because that was a Batman movie, not a Superman.
Especially since he died stupid.
He died stupid.
Yeah.
Compare that to Endgame. How did you feel when Stark died?
Damn it. I still cry when I see that shit, dude. Oh my God.
See? And that is the difference between character development and putting in the time and having that emotional payoff versus having a thing happen because it'll be super cool.
Well,
no, but like let's be real. That's why I was in there. The moment they're like, it's Doomsday of Moria.
Right.
Because Weta only makes cave trolls, apparently.
That's right. Well, and even Doomsday, that the whole creation of Doomsday was like the weirdest fucking shit in that movie where they're just like, give me the body of Zod. Okay, I'm going to bring him in a pool, a little bathtub downstairs with some toasters, and then I'm going to coo at him and bleed human blood on his face. And you're like, wait, what? What the fuck? So when it comes to the Snyder Cut, and let me wrap it up by sort of coming at it from this angle. Mm-hmm. I love bad ideas sometimes. Right? Like when I saw the trailer for Jupiter Ascending and it was done by the Wachowskis, I was like, I am seeing that movie. That is going to be a pile of dog shit like no other.
I refused to see it in theater, and then the wife made me buy it. So I own Jupiter Ascending just so she could see it and enjoy the fucking shit show train wreck that was Jupiter Ascending.
It's so goddamn close to my heart how bad it is. Like, they're just movies that I know, like, they're just shit and they're terrible and they're done so badly, you know, but I'll watch them and just giggle the whole way through because they're just so fucking, it's a study on how not to make a movie, you know? And as an avid moviegoer, and as you said, like, we watch a lot of film theory and stuff like that, you know, breakdowns of that film and breakdowns of other stuff. And like the honest trailers for it is fantastic. And like all of these things, you know, when I see something like that come out and this big thing and you can see that the company behind it is fucking pushing it, man. Like they're like, yeah, this is the one. This is going to bring us to the light. And everyone watching that trailer goes, oh no, they really think this is going to be good, don't they? And that's what makes me interested in this. I'm interested in what I'm sitting in the bleachers waiting for the two trains to just plow into each other. I am ready for it. So yeah, I'm excited. Any last words on that one, Nathan?
No, listen, I like bad movies that are made with the intent of being bad. I hate bad movies that are trying to take themselves seriously and play it straight.
Mm-hmm.
It's why Jupiter Ascending, which is a fucking train wreck, is almost unwatchable for me because yes, it is a garbage movie, but they are so earnest and they are trying so fucking hard for this to be the new Matrix that it hurts me even more. But then you compare that to like schlock like Sharknado and like the Piranhas fucking series. Like I eat that shit up because they are setting out to make a bad shitty movie, and so that's fun. So that's why for me, I'm like, oh, I don't want to watch the Snyder Cut, but you're right, we'll do a follow-up.
Oh, I'm praying. I absolutely am hoping that they don't back out on this and that it's not just some publicity stunt. I'm hoping that they're actually going to follow through with it. But given the levels of development hell that the first Justice League went through, I highly doubt that it's ever going to get that far. The only thing going for it right now is that there's a pandemic on and everyone is starved for movies and content. But boy, you should have thought about that 2 years ago. Because by 2021, we're either going to be all dead or shit's going to be back to normal. So I don't think that that's a great plan, to say the least. Okay, let's move on. So let's stay in the vein of TV and movies, and let's talk about Picard.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a thumbs up on this one, Nathan. I liked Picard. It is pretty good. That's as much as I'm willing to give it because it really did not stick the landing for me.
No, I agree. It's a thumbs up for me. I think that as a 10 episode story arc where, you know, it's talking through, I'm on board. I felt that it had the right hits of nostalgia where it wasn't Rise of Skywalker about it, and it was just very, very much, if you are a fan and you are aware of the fucking 1,000 hours of TNG and all of that exists out here, like, this is for you, and it's in the background. I thought that they did the nostalgia right. I thought that the story was going really well. But yeah, I felt kind of the same about them.
And then Akiva Goldsman shows up and fucks everything.
Because yeah, like for me, that last episode was where everything was just sort of like Deus Ex Machina, and it was so poorly done because the rest of the show hadn't been like that.
No, again, this is Akiva Goldsman. If you don't know who he is, I'd like to read you some of his IMDb page.
Okay.
Creator of Titans.
Okay.
The screenplay for The Dark Tower.
Ooh, okay.
He wrote the story for Transformers Last Night, Fifth Wave, Insurgent.
Ooh. So we're in like
screenplay for I Am Legend
territory here.
Oh,
Weiss
man.
and Benioff territory of this is a guy.
Wrote Lost in Space. Wrote Batman and Robin.
Oh my God.
Wrote Batman Forever.
Okay, now I know you can cherry pick bad. Are there any legitimately like good things that they've that he's oopsed into?
Yes, he was he wrote the screenplay for, or was one of the writers for the screenplay of iRobot.
Okay.
And
which was fine.
He also wrote a couple of episodes of Fringe.
Mm.
And
Wow, that is a show that I completely had forgotten existed.
Yeah. So
Um,
here's my take on Picard, right? Patrick Stewart is a gem. He's a national treasure. We all love him, and he takes every minute of that show seriously, except for the episode where they're just having fun, which I love.
Yes. Where he was a French pimp. I loved it.
I just laughed my ass off. It was so fucking entertaining. And I think that he does a very, very good job of propelling the story forward. Without him, there are other good actors on the show, and there are some compelling side stories that develop these characters well. And I like that. There are characters that are in the show that are completely undeveloped, which is really, really fucking problematic, because those characters are cool and we would like to know a little bit fucking more about them. And as the show sort of progresses on, you get closer and closer to the reveal, right? And in J.J. Abrams fashion, the reveal is not good. You have to sit there and wonder, like, was this the reveal the whole time? Like, was this the story the whole time? And was this the direction you had intended to go the whole time? But individual episodes stand out really, really well. My favorite episode of the entire season was when they land on the planet with Riker and Deanna.
Mm-hmm.
And I fully understand why Jonathan Frakes had a panic attack while filming that episode and like locked himself in his trailer because he's like, I forgot how to act, and these two are destroying every scene. I was like tearing up in that episode when Deanna's talking about her son. All of their interactions are just phenomenal. And you can see, I mean, Jonathan Frakes did an okay job. I didn't think he did a bad job, but next to those two, he was just,
I was going to say,
outshine.
He didn't stand out, no. Good or bad. And that when you are with heavyweights like that, that's all you can ask for. Because again, like even when we've talked about it, when we were talking about Suicide Squad, the actor who played, fucking Rick Staff or Flagstaff,
Joel
who
Kinnaman.
Gives a shit? Joel Kinnaman. Rick Flag. See, whatever.
I know.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah, pretty much.
Joel Kinnaman, you told me at the time, because I was like, oh my God, he might as well have been a cardboard cutout. You're like, he is a good TV actor. And you see that in Altered Carbon season 1. He carries the show. He really does. Like his performance and everything he does.
Maybe we'll talk about Altered Carbon season 2 after this.
Oof. Ooh, listen, I have read all 3 books. I fucking love the series. I am very much looking forward to the Altered Carbon fucking RPG that's coming out. And good God, season 2 is a train wreck.
Yeah,
anyway,
it was really bad.
Joel Kinnaman is a fantastic television actor, and he was able to carry an entire show to himself. And he stood out as being terrible because next to Margot Robbie and Will Smith, you noticed him. You noticed how awful he was. Jonathan Frakes, because you're totally right. Dude hasn't acted really in 25 years. 20 years.
He's done some voice acting for like Adventure Time and for like a couple of other cartoons.
Sure.
Yeah.
But like, dude enjoyed his post Star Trek retirement
because he's been directing consistently.
No, and that's exactly it. He moved to the director's chair. TNG gave him that break into the director's chair. Mm-hmm. He directed countless other Star Trek episodes throughout DS9 and Enterprise and Voyager. Like he has been a director.
Directed
but
Orville.
That's what I mean when
he's directed on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's directed on The 100. I think he's directed, like, you go down the list, like this dude's been working consistently as a director. Yeah.
But not as an actor. No. So I can absolutely, I did not know that, but he didn't stand out bad. And I can completely understand why he would feel that way, because if he hasn't been acting, those are skills that he has kind of lost next to a pair of fucking heavyweights. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't noticeable in a good or a bad way. Like he just didn't stand out. He fit in to every scene. And I think that worked.
Yes. And I do think that, again, like these performances do carry the show a long way. And then we get an enormous amount of callbacks to not only Star Trek The Next Generation, but to Voyager, and like Deep Space Nine and other Star Trek shows. So like there's clearly a care for continuity here. And there's a care for Star Trek fans who like want to know these things, and they're constantly referencing stuff that I love. This entire 10-episode run is based on one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation. And this makes it very much hit home for me. And I've talked to a lot of people who fucking hate this show. They despise it to no end because it's not really Star Trek. It talks about Star Trek a lot. It references Star Trek a lot, but it doesn't really follow the format of Star Trek. And
yeah, but I think anyone who makes that argument is already dead to me. That's because at the end of the day, what they're saying is 1990s and early 2000 television format is the only format for Star Trek, period.
That's right. Yeah, and I've made that argument too, yeah.
Like, no, like, fuck off. Like, remember, serialized storytelling, the way television is told now, where it's basically a movie in 10 hours, that started in the Netflix era. Like, that started... Well, actually, it started before that, but it came into its own in the Netflix era. So, like, it really... like
started with, like, Lost and shows like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, even fucking Supernatural was one of the earliest ones.
And they were still pretty monster of the week.
They were, because, again, that was what they had to be, because that was what television was.
Two hot guys hunting ghosts.
And so, saying that television that is told in a modern format isn't TV or isn't Star Trek, it's just a baseless, shitty argument where you're looking for a reason to hate something.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Like, listen, right after we watched Into Darkness, because I think we watched it together.
Yes. We were both exceptionally hammered.
Absolutely.
And
because it was at Kyle's thing.
That's right.
We all watched Into Darkness, and I was like, I enjoyed that, which could have been all the drinking. And then I was like, let's go watch Wrath of Khan. And then you watch it, and even though these are effectively the same film, Into Darkness is a much better movie, start to finish, because action movies and sci-fi movies from the 1980s are just paced differently, and it is so fucking slow. It is like watching paint dry. And then you will get a 2-minute action scene. And then you have another hour of watching paint dry. Oh yeah,
and DeForest Kelly and fucking Scotty. You know, there's not a lot of action going on there.
No sir. Yeah, exactly. As the ships are just flying through a nebula, and you have action music. Yeah. But like, that's the thing. I can still look back at Wrath of Khan fondly, even though, again, I've watched it recently and just be like, this movie is shit, but I still like it because when I watched it, movies were different.
Well, it's a product
but I'm not going to then say every modern movie is bad because it's not like the action movies of the 70s and 80s. Like, it's such a hollow fucking argument.
Well, and to me, the reason why it's a really hollow argument and it doesn't really work for me is that I'll be the first person to admit, like, yeah, it's not Star Trek. The Star Trek format can't really work anymore, and that's why we saw Voyager and fucking Enterprise fail the way that they did, is because that format just doesn't play. It doesn't play. Like, the best parts of Voyager is when there's a long-form story happening over multiple episodes. The best part of Enterprise is the same thing, the Xindi War that we get to follow over a bunch of episodes. And with
DS9 is one of the best Star Trek series because they have that long arching formula, but they still,
with the Dominion War,
they had the Dominion War basically get for 7 seasons. Because, like, listen, I've rewatched DS9 recently.
Same.
The Dominion War is only 1 season.
Yep.
But good God, do you ever feel like it's longer? And you feel like, is it because they hinted at it for 7 straight years, while always maybe 1 out of every 5 or 6 episodes coming back to promote the idea of the Dominion War and there's this big bad, while still being Monster of the Week.
Yeah.
And it's that structure that when people think back on DS9, that they're just like, oh yeah, it was one of the best because they had the Dominion War and it was so good and it was like, you know, it lasted multiple seasons. You're like, no. The Dominion War, when war was declared, was only season 7.
Yeah.
Everything else was like the Dominion Cold War.
the thing for me about this whole idea is that from the perspective of comparing it to TNG, I don't think you can do that. And I think that this is part of the reason why Discovery failed so hard for me, is they were desperately trying to hybridize it, where they're just like, well, we'll do some Star Trek episodes, but we're mostly going to do an overarching story. but that overarching story is going to be delivered to you like Star Trek episodes. And I've always said that that show isn't Star Trek in a lot of ways, but like it has this thing where they tried to make it work and it just didn't work. I like serialized television. I like watching long form stories that happen in pods throughout a season. I love the idea of a cliffhanger at the end of one episode to pick up at the next episode, as opposed to every episode resolving itself in a nice, neat little package, right? But I like both of those things for different reasons. And I don't see how people who hate this show for that reason can't have that distinction in their head that I like this, but I also like this, because these are the same people who will tell me that they love Game of Thrones and they love The Expanse and they love all of these other shows. And I'm like, yeah, but that's what Picard is. Picard is the same thing. It's telling one story over 10 episodes. The other big complaint that I get from people who fucking hate this show is that they don't like Picard. He's old and weak.
Yes, that's the point.
I seem to recall that people age.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
This
like
in people get old.
He was such a strong person before, and it's like, yeah,
no,
he's got
wasn't.
a brain condition now, and he's old as fuck. Like,
I was gonna say, but even then, when you look at TNG, more often than not, he was the damsel. And yes, you saw that mental strength because he has always had mental strength, which you even see throughout Picard when the chips are down. You know, if his body can't do it, his fucking mind is still sharp.
He was a tough guy, you know, Darmok and Jalad, you know, got stabbed in the heart, laughed.
Yeah.
You know, he was still a tough guy, but he was not
He did get
Worf.
stabbed in the heart when he was a fucking freshly graduated cadet. Like, he was fucking ensign level. No, listen, there were these moments of him being the physical badass.
Yes.
But when you watch TNG, that was never his role.
No.
It was Worf's role. It was Data's role. Sometimes Geordi would get to
Sometimes
flex,
Riker
and
to be up
do
in
it.
there. Yeah.
Sometimes Riker would do
Jitsu.
it. Right. But like, Picard's role was always that of the diplomat. So even when Picard was in trouble, it was his mental fortitude that got him out. He didn't just go punch a Gorn like Kirk.
Right.
Like,
and he was a man of principle.
Yes.
Like, that was his guiding character trait, was that he was a man of principle. He was going to tell admirals to go fuck themselves if he disagreed. He was going to not follow orders. He was going to make the right choice regardless. Admiral says, take Data away. He goes, no, not on my ship. You'll get a court-martial for this. Fucking get it then. You know, he was up in people's face based on his principles. And I feel like they carried that over really well into this show. He literally leaves Starfleet based on his principles. You know, and then he makes a change in his life. He becomes a crotchety old, angry old man. And then he realizes that, you know, he made this choice based on his principles, but he didn't follow through with it. He just sat there and he brooded and he pouted and he didn't do what he needed to do until he figured out, you know, he got a push. He figured out what he needed to do. One of the other things that I get as a complaint about this show, and again, you'll notice that Nathan and I are defending this show vehemently right now. We're going to be talking about why it failed at the end pretty soon here. The other big complaint that I get from people about this show is that, oh, fuck, I lost it. See, this is what happens when my brain starts going in a bunch of different directions.
See, I don't talk to people about shows. Like, you're it. Like, the wife and I will talk about it, and like, we can enjoy something, and, you know, again.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, go.
Perfect. Sorry, I just had to go into my mind palace for a second. Basically, the other big complaint that I get about this show is the relationship between Picard and Data, where they're like, Picard and Data were never friends. He never cared about Data like he cares about him. No, I'm fucking serious. And I'm like, did you not
ever
watch the show or the movies? This man went to bat for Data more times than we could count. And Data literally sacrificed himself for him at the end. Like, it was a crushing thing to have happen. And there's a lot of people out there who are just, they're nitpicking at the weirdest things. Oh, Daj is a Mary Sue. It's like, she's a fucking android, man. She's not even that good compared to androids like Data, for fuck's sakes. Like, what are you even talking about? But like, this is the one that baffled me so much. They were friends. They spent time on the holodeck as he's teaching them how to act. They spent hours upon hours upon hours talking about humanity, talking about all these things. You can't tell me there wasn't a relationship there. That's insane to say that there wasn't a relationship there.
Yeah, no, again, I have never heard that because, again, like, the moment you said it, I'm like, have you just never watched TNG? Because, like, okay, listen, if all you've watched are the TNG movies, maybe you're a bit confused because Generations not there. I mean, like, shit, you know what? Even if all you've watched is the movies, Picard, despite heavy PTSD, wades into some heavy shit just to save Data in First Contact. He could have destroyed the ship, but he went for Data. Is that meaningless? Like, that's why I'm like, have you only watched Star Trek Insurrection? Maybe just the I've only watched Star Trek 9, and I can tell you that this whole show is bullshit because the relationship from Star Trek Insurrection. I mean, they barely talk to each other in that movie. Like, fuck off.
All right, let's get into the bad here. Dodge didn't work for me.
I was fine with her kind of being wooden and robotic. She was definitely the weakest of the characters from both a writing and an acting perspective. Yes. Goddamn, I loved her Romulan Bay so much more than her.
Yeah.
He was like, listen, I'd do the Tal Shiar. Like, I'll tell you anything. Just,
Listen, yeah. Don't get me wrong, okay? The weird twincest thing going on. Everything that was happening there, I was like, this is fucking TNG sexy as shit right now. Right. But Dodge really didn't work for me. I think as sort of the centerpiece of the story, her character is very uninspired and you don't care about her. You just don't. And I had a really hard time giving a shit anytime she made any decision because all she really did was complain. And it was supposed to be a focus on sort of her trying to grasp her humanity lost, right? And that humanity lost eventually kind of coming around to like, well, but I'm my own thing. Mm-hmm. It just didn't play because it was so sudden and it was so abrupt and we never really saw a proper character arc for her. She just starts off and then peaks and then drops.
You kind of saw the start of that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
in that Riker episode. Like, you saw the start of the fucking, like, just because I'm not human doesn't mean I'm not special or I'm not something.
Yeah.
And that was really, really well played. And then, like she was written by Weiss and Benioff, she forgot about everything that happened on that planet was just like, there aren't good organics. Let's commit genocide. And you're like,
yeah. So we're obviously well into spoilers here, everybody. So we didn't throw a spoiler thing out there, but fuck you anyways. Yeah, like the problem with her is that you can't track her emotional state or her mental state anytime throughout the show. You can track it with Ramirez. You can track it with what was her name? Picard's friend. You can track it with the doctor. Oh, you can track it.
She was my favorite. I was heartbroken for her.
Yeah, no, it was fucked up. I'm really looking forward to the second season, mostly because of like where her character goes, because I thought that she had the most interesting character story. I really like Ramirez. I love his ship full of holograms. I absolutely adored him as a character actor. He's phenomenal, and it plays in every single scene, and I love it. But her,
Raffi.
like, she's just always floating in the middle and you don't ever know what the fuck she's doing or thinking. Mm-hmm. And then when the story turns into Mass Effect, she's like, she almost has no place in the story. Like, why anyone gives a shit about what she has to say is bananas, considering that they find a fucking planet full of space orchids that has tons of her. There's just tons of these things walking around. Mm-hmm. Like, who gives a fuck? I love Brent Spiner, but what the fuck was Brent Spiner's mystery forgotten child doing in this fucking show? Like, they establish in TNG, and again, this is where Akiva Goldsman comes in and fucks up everything. He wrote both of these episodes. He directed both of these episodes. They are horseshit in the highest possible way. I don't think this man knows a fucking thing about Star Trek. I think that this show suffers from having too many producers and too many writers. And I think 3 out of the 5 writers know fucking Star Trek and love it. And then this dude's here because he's clearly not done enough bad shit in Hollywood for people to blackball his ass yet. He's in the boys club making movies and fucking TV shows still. And, you know, it just makes no fucking sense. If you watch the show, you know, Soong didn't have kids. They say it very specifically many, many times. The androids were his children. Even when you talk to his wife, who is an android, you know, these were his children. They didn't have other children. And to have him pop up and be like, you know, it's me, Johnny Soong. Like, fuck off. Who came up with this stupid idea? And then you get to the planet and a bunch of the androids are fucking evil. And you're like, yeah, that's why we need to wipe them out. And then the Reapers show up and it's like, you know, I've played this video game.
Yes. Well, and again, so like for me, my biggest fucking problem is it just fell into the narratively bankrupt, like fucking when you're out of ideas as a story writer. Mm-hmm. You just make everything bigger and badder, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, the Orchids being the defense mechanism that they depower ships, they crash them down. Fine. That's cool. So like we have 15 Orchids. How many Romulan ships are coming? 230 or some stupid random number.
Ridiculous number.
Some absolutely ridiculous number. And you're just like, why? Why does it have to be that many? Let's be real here. There's 15 of you. You're in one fucking like prepper compound. If they were like, there are 16 ships and we only have 15 Orchids, that's enough to wipe you out.
Right.
But it's just like, so the Romulans, they have to be insurmountable, like absolute fucking batshit crazy, impossible odds. And then the Reapers come. And then the Reapers get the door shut. But, you know, it's not like they don't know everything now. Like it's
Daj
not like
had
that's
a change of heart for no fucking reason.
And then there are like Romulan +1 Federation ships that come, and you're just like, good fucking God.
The copy paste fleets.
Yes,
we've got 301 of the newest, most bestest galaxy classes. Like,
yes.
This is where this show really starts to fall apart, is because all of the things that they built this show on, they abandon. They abandon them almost immediately. You know, you've based the show on building off of previous television episodes, building off of Voyager episodes with Seven of Nine, building off of TNG episodes.
Seven was like the unsung hero of that show. Every one of her episodes were fucking great.
I would love to see Seven and the Rangers out there as like a separate show. I would watch that.
As would I. So here's my problem, right? When you look at, and it was one of the things that you said earlier when you talked about like principle, Picard is doing the right thing. And so you have 8 episodes where it's sort of this cat and mouse. Is Picard going to get to Daj before the fucking Romulans
the
Jadvash before they off her? What's going to happen? And so, like I said, there very much was this sort of back and forth. There's this cat and mouse. Picard was doing what he believed in. Fuck the consequences, which is why he had a doctor lie for him, which is why he effectively hired a mercenary ship because Starfleet showed him the fucking door. Like, he was doing all of these things because they were 100% in character for him. And this was this slow build, almost like mystery thriller type of show for 8 episodes. And it balanced in that style beautifully. It told the story it wanted to do. It teased just enough out. Like I said, the nostalgia hits were perfect. Like, they didn't make a big deal about the fact that fucking Hugh was helping other Borg be deborgified.
Right.
You know, like all of these things. So it just like, it was this beautiful balancing act. Then we get to this penultimate episode, the 2 written by Akiva Goldsman. And what happens? It turns into the fucking epic fucking Battle of Winterfell bullshit zombie horde garbage. But that's where we
Oh yeah.
came.
Oh,
And so we
100%.
have this fucking psychological thriller, effectively, where you have this plucky band of underdogs racing against time, trying, to combat this impossible foe who is, has better resources. They're younger, they're faster, they're better trained, they're better at everything. And yet we're still rooting for Picard and Rios and Raffi. Fuck Girardi.
Yeah, fuck Girardi.
We're rooting for them to beat these odds. And then what happens? In these 2 span of episodes, we have a insurmountable fleet of Romulans coming to kill 15 robots.
Yep.
A race of Reapers coming to commit genocide on trillions of life forms. And a Starfleet fleet that's going to be insurmountably bigger than the Romulans. Why did we devolve into this bullshit?
Yeah.
Like, why did you just abandon everything to have a gunfight?
Well, and yeah, like, I think this is where you see Akiva Goldsmith just fuck things up, as he tends to do. And, when you look at the story as it was progressing, like you said, it was the cat and mouse game. There was mystery and we were going in this direction. But as soon as we got answers, those answers were all written by Akiva. And, we see the vision, and the vision makes no fucking sense, but it somehow links to Star Trek Discovery. And apparently Data's in the vision, and apparently the Starfleet symbol's in the vision. And all of these things are pointing at that. It's pointing at Star Trek Discovery to say, hey, go watch Star Trek Discovery. And it's this stupid story where Girardi, Admiral Ho showed her the vision. And so she was more than willing to kill a man she loved in order to do it. But then as soon as she did that, she was like, I don't like it anymore, so I'm going to go against it now. Like, if the vision was so bad that you were able to kill a man that you love, what the fuck would ever make you change your mind? Like, if you told me something so horrific that I had to kill my wife, right? Mm-hmm. 25 minutes later and 3 pieces of cake, I would not be telling you, I'm good now, let's go back the other direction. Like, This is some serious life-changing shit. And then when we see the vision, it's nothing that would make you kill my wife or make me kill my wife. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's nothing that would ever in a million years make you think that that would be the way to do it. And then you introduce the Jadvash, the super secret Tal Shiar. And, you sort of hint at the fact that, like, Romulans and Vulcans and all these other powers within the Alpha Quadrant are part of this thing, but you don't ever actually talk about it. You don't ever actually answer it. Oh, there's a well and you touch it and it makes you crazy. Fucking why? Really? Like, in the age of science, we're going to stand around this well and touch it with our hands? Go fuck yourself. Nobody thought to plug a tricorder into it. An android has to touch it. That's how it'll work. And oh my God, can we please talk about the fact that a android mind melded with a person? Like, this is so fucking stupid. Mm-hmm. It like, the level at which you are, like, it's telepathy. Androids don't have telepathy. A mind meld is not just the placement of your fucking fingers. Like, this, I don't think he's ever watched Star Trek, this motherfucker. This is the problem that I have with this shit. And then they go, oh, well, we need something to fix the ship. Well, here, I'll give you a little blob with a needle at the front, and it just does everything. You just think about it and it does it.
If you imagine it.
Yeah, you just think about it and it does it. Oh, well, we need to fix this thing.
It's like a Green Lantern ring.
Close your eyes and think about it and it does it. Project a bunch of holograms into space. Yeah, sure, it does it. Like, the stupidity that comes out of these episodes is mind-numbing. And it's so bad that I was sitting there, like, baffled at what the fuck was going on. Like, it was so confusing. And we're going to get to the biggest spoiler if you haven't watched the show. So, Picard dies. He dies of his illness incredibly suddenly. I thought this illness, the way that they described it before, was it was going to be more of like a wasting away type thing. in the final episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, it seems like it's more of like his cognitive functions are breaking down, right? The Venn diagram syndrome or whatever it's fucking called.
Mm-hmm.
But in this one, it just kills him within the span of like an hour and a half. Patrick Stewart is a phenomenal actor. He's a gem. His death sequence almost made me cry, but they filmed it so badly that it took away any emotion I had. Because they would zoom in on Patrick Stewart and you're like, oh my God, this is fucking happening. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. And then they would cut to some schmuck who's like, can't cry on screen, going like, oh my God, no, Jean-Luc. And then they cut back to Captain Picard and you're like, oh, okay, this is fucking happening. I don't know if I can handle this shit. And then they cut away to some other fucking schmuck. It's like, I don't know how dumb you are as a director. Film the talent, okay? Like, just leave the camera on fucking Patrick Stewart and let us just sit in the tragedy that is the end of this great man's life, right? Like, just please, for the love of God, just do that. But they had to literally cut to every single other cast member who happened to suddenly have been transported to the exact location at the exact time of his death so that they could all cry. And it just destroyed that scene for me.
Yeah, no, like you're absolutely right. And I think for me, the other issue that I had, because I kept expecting him to get cured, because I knew that on all the press tours, fuck, even before episode 1 aired, he was inviting Whoopi Goldberg to come be Guinan again. Season 2. So, like, you knew the dude was going to live. So even when they were doing it, and Patrick Stewart was trying his damnedest to just fucking sell this as like this big, meaningful, momentous occasion, they fucked it in the press tours, right? So you're just like, oh, we know he's gonna be fine. Yep. And then the way he was fine was the dumbest shit in the world.
Oh my God. Yeah, we just made you're an android body, but like with organic android parts.
So we put you in an android body, so you don't have to worry about your brain thing. So I'm super strong now? No, we didn't think you'd want to be super strong. Will I live forever? No, you'll die the same you would have normally. So really, it's just, there's literally, like, we could have cured it and it would have made more sense. Because, like, let's be real, if Dr. Sung can create fucking butterflies and shit, maybe he had the medical expertise to fix a brain aneurysm or whatever the fuck it was.
Well, even if they had just replaced a portion of his brain, right? Like, why do you need to go the whole ham of his body dies? You know what I mean? The problem with what they did at the end of the show by having Picard die and then immediately putting him into a robot body, and then immediately like waking up and having tea.
And we're talking immediately, because basically he dies, fade to black, and like fucking end the season there, man. Just fucking end it. Yeah. Have some fucking balls.
Oh my God, where are we gonna go in season 2? You know, like,
what do we have? We have him and Data having the conversation that Picard has been tormented by never having had.
That's right.
Immediately he just has a conversation where it's like, no, I am totally Data's consciousness. How? Technobabble.
Well, there's a fraction of a nano which has all of my memories in it. Like
and it's a quantum simulation. Like, I think you forget how much technobabble.
Yeah, no, it's fucking
they
ridiculous.
Were on trying to explain why. And like, listen, I love Brent Spiner. Brent Spiner is a great actor, but forcing him into the makeup, and because like you can see him as Dr. Soong.
Yes.
He is not a lithe 30-year-old like he was in the 80s playing Data on TNG. Dude's put on some weight, which we all have since the 80s.
100%.
It's like, I'm not even like, this is not a judgmental thing, but like,
I used to be 120 pounds. I remember.
Time has passed, and yet they still force him into the fucking costume and the makeup.
Well, and he said,
and then
he said he never wanted to come back as Data again. Like he made it very clear. He's like, I can't do it. It's from an acting perspective, he can't do it. And they tried to do it with makeup. They tried to do it with computer graphics. And it still didn't work. Like, who in their right mind looked at that final product and said, good enough? You know?
Yes.
It's unnecessary to go that far. But yeah, let's talk about the fucking quantum simulation conversation that they have, and then the eventual death of Data, where Data's like, I should die. That's part of mortality. That's part of humanity, is that I should die. What bothered me about that conversation, what really sort of took me out of it, was that it wasn't the most recent Data we've seen. It wasn't the Data with the emotion chip. It wasn't the Data who was sort of like fun-loving. It was the cold, dry season 1 Data. And that really hurt that conversation, because he's having that conversation and it's just not playing, because we already know that Data has moved past that sort of stuff. We already know that he was in a very, very different space. Even in Generations, the difference between him at the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie, and then all the way to the end of fucking Nemesis, like he's a completely different person. And that's not the Data that it would be having that conversation. Now that's a nitpick. The problem here is that you gave Data a sort of relatively good sad send-off, where they just kept the camera on the fucking talent. And it drove me fucking crazy, because I was like, how did you do that right and then do everything else with fucking Patrick Stewart wrong? Now, I don't give a shit that Patrick Stewart's a fucking android now. I just don't understand why you would even do the whole Venn diagram syndrome thing from the start, just so that you could do this. It was completely unnecessary, because if you were going to keep him around anyways, there was no reason to have this happen. I could come up with a reason. I could say, oh, well, in the next season, he's going to go, well, I'm going to fight for the rights of androids, because guess what? I'm a fucking android too, you know, like some nonsense like that. But I don't want that. I don't want that. I'm not looking forward to that. Captain Picard is dead, because I'll tell you this much. When I played Mass Effect, all right, I chose the right ending. I blew up all of the relays. I destroyed the Reapers. I hate the Geth. I wiped them out, because fucking AI are not people. They're not. Captain Picard is dead. Yes, this is his consciousness in a robot body, but like, it just doesn't play very well when you are trying. It's like why Westworld fails for me, right? I don't know. I don't think you've watched Westworld, have you?
Oh, so I tried when I had my gallbladder surgery, because where I live is, you know, like the 1980s. They have video rental places, so I rented season 1 of Westworld. I made like 5 episodes in, but I was like, nothing has, like, every episode is the same episode. I'm bored. And so instead I just watched Vikings, and Vikings is a better show.
Yeah, Vikings is a good show. No, Westworld, I like to refer to Westworld as being the dumbest smart show on television. I'm sure I've said this before. But the problem with Westworld is that it is, the entire story and the narrative is based on the idea that robots are people. They have souls, and that they deserve as much rights as anybody else, and that what we do to them is bad, right? But the show constantly undermines its own focal point. It undermines its narrative by pointing out that these are murderous killing machines that can be reprogrammed at a whim to do horrible things on a regular basis. Like, they're not human. And then in the second season, it's more the same. They're like, it's not compatible with the human brain. It doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like, the show constantly hurts itself by saying, this is the core part of the show. Here's why this show fails. So when you get to the end of fucking Picard and he's this android, it's like, but you've already introduced us to a bunch of androids that are perfectly fine with genocide on a galactic scale. These are not people we can keep around. Like, it's just not. Anybody who stands in a group and they go, yeah, we should absolutely call in the Reapers to wipe out all of the organics. You go, nobody has a problem with this? Nobody? Not one of you? Not a single one of you?
Because after the events that occurred, every single one of them has the knowledge that this is an option, even if they don't have the particular know-how, and only Dodge still has that.
Right.
Right? Because, you know, it's possible, but still, The fact that every other android knows that they're one bad day away from calling the Reapers or having that
Yeah.
option,
Yeah.
that's kind of fucked up.
Well, and the thing that drives me nuts about even like the last scene with the copy paste starship fleets and the Federation plus one, is that like you basically created the Jad Vash throughout this thing as a like hyper fanatical anti AI organization,
Yes.
and when they show up to the planet, it takes them 30 fucking minutes to target the 15 androids on the surface and fire a single torpedo.
Yes.
Even if you get into a fight with the Federation, one ship has to get through and fire a torpedo. One ship. That's it.
Or
It's
even ram the surface, because if you're going to engage your full impulse engines coming
yeah,
in through Atmo,
yeah.
these are fanatics
There's no
who are just
stopping
like,
them at this point.
we're
They've
outnumbered
succeeded.
and we'll be in trouble. We
They've
better leave.
They have succeeded at this point. Like, this is what blows my mind about that last sequence is that Picard makes an impassioned plea, and then fucking Riker shows up, and they do this stupid hologram shit. You know, like, you just go down the checklist of stupid, and even after all of that nonsense happens, you've still won. Just fire your weapons. Like, their shields can't stop your weapons from firing at the surface. It's unbelievably stupid. These people are willing to die for their cause. And they just keep making stupid decisions near the end of it. Like, why does the Borg cube show up at the end? Oh, so that we can keep having stuff happen with 7 of 9.
Yes.
Does it involve anybody else?
The only reason. Because the Borg cube has no part to play in the final confrontation.
None whatsoever. But she's just there. It's just there. It's just there. It just happens. Whatever. So yeah, you can tell why this hurts us. For the people listening, Nathan and I, and Matt as well, because Matt and I had the same conversation. He fully agrees. The show is excellent. And boy, oh boy, does it ever reach some good heights. And then the last 2 episodes are so unbelievably bad that all I can do is go, yeah, it's good. Thumbs up overall. But like, holy fucking shit, they need to dig themselves out of this stuff. And please get Akiva Goldsman the fuck away from the writing room. I mean, again, we've talked about this before. This is the problem when you have 12 producers and 8 writers on this fucking show. Like, it's insane to do this. I get that it's hard to make Star Trek. I get that nobody wants to give it money. I get that it's been a consistent failure for the past, 10 years? But like, holy shit, this was your chance, man. This was your chance to make this happen. And you gave the last 2 episodes to this fuck? Holy shit, what were you thinking? Get Jonathan Frakes to do that shit.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
I'm very angry about it. All right, Nathan. Let's move on to Dungeons and Dragons. So this is the portion of the show where we're going to answer a question from one of the listeners regarding Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a longtime dungeon master. Nathan is a player. So you're going to get both perspectives. So this question comes from a good friend of mine. He is not on Facebook, so he texted it to me. He says, I've played D&D for almost 30 years. Every edition except 4th because it seemed like garbage. So now I'm back into it, and I run a campaign for 5 players. So everything is pretty awesome. The issue that some players have, he goes, really, it's only 1 player, is how to play their alignment. I know there are a lot of factors, but let's be honest, chaotic neutral is the most ridiculous alignment. So how do you enforce alignment while still having an open mind to allow the players to do what they want? This is a great question. Great question. I won't say his name. I'll use the fake name of Trash Empire.
Oh yeah, no. As soon as you were like, he's not on Facebook, I'm like, oh yeah. God, he's old. He's not even like he's just gonna text you it. That's great.
Yeah, he said Empire Army, but I'm gonna say Trash Empire because I remember when he threw his Empire Army in the trash after a game that we
beat
played.
His ass so bad.
Yes. Okay, so this is really hard because this is probably the most. It's the thing that most often sort of breaks the what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it breaks your sense of fantasy. It breaks the role play, right? When you have to address this with a player during a game. But Nathan, you've played a couple of different alignments with a couple of different players. You had an evil character. You've had some neutral characters. You've had some good characters. What do you see as a player when it comes to alignments, looking at the way you handle it and the way that you see other players handle it?
Sure. So first things out of the gates. Honestly, I don't understand D&D alignment that well.
Okay. Like, most people don't. Holy fuck.
No, for sure. But so my approach to it and what I do as a player when I'm doing it, part of my character creation is just trying to come up with like a loose framework of how they would solve problems. And that will tend to lean me into different alignments. So for example, in one campaign, my cleric is a pacifist. He wasn't a pacifist in the first session, and thankfully none of the other characters remember this. I'm sure you noticed.
I remembered because we had the conversation after the first episode.
Yes, and that was the thing. And so it was one of those things where, and in fairness, in that episode or in that session, you did kind of like mind fuck us pretty hard.
I did, yes.
And turn the universe upside down. And so one of the things that I did is I came up with with this character, and these are kind of his motivations. And I used that as my sort of guide star. How would this character react? Are they a murderer? And as a player, you should know this ahead of time. How do you consider life? Because let's be honest, D&D, you're a fucking murder hobo. You're going to be dungeon crawling. You are going to be put into certain circumstances and situations where you're going to need to know this. Same thing with like the big crimes I kind of go through. Are they a murderer? Are they a thief? How do they feel about this? And so when I was making that character that ended up becoming a pacifist, to me, it felt like a natural evolution of his own motivations, especially after the events of session 1, where his entire world turned out to be a fucking lie. And he had to deal with that. And how does he cope with that? And how does he cope with that heavy knowledge that he had? And I realized that character would not be able to hurt anyone or anything. Like, that's the thing. So just like, even when we were in fights, we'd have these fucking portals and shadow demons are coming out of it. He would never attack even a shadow demon because that is still life, and that is still going against what that character felt and what that character had to go through to get there. On the flip side, I've played ones that are intellectually curious and have no problems with murder or theft, so long as it filled that emotional or psychological need. And that's kind of how I, as a player, approach things. So I don't try to fit myself into a box of neutral, chaotic neutral, or lawful evil, or whatever. When you press me on it, I'll try to just be like, well, this is kind of the corner they're on. So like that was the thing. Like again, like that's how I do it. And so as a result, I don't think I've ever, as a player, run it. Okay, there was the one time when I was trying to Patrick Rothfuss bullshit with my pacifist, where you were like, your character would not do that. That is murder. I was like, oh, fuck, it is. I was just trying to be clever. But I tend to stick to those things that I develop either in character creation or within the first 2 sessions when you're actually road testing this character and you're encountering certain situations. Basically, if I hadn't considered it and it's the first time, I'm going to think about it and just be like, and this is now canon. And like my character does evolve.
All right, keep talking. I got to plug my laptop in. I forgot to.
All right. I am happy to. It's funny. He said that the moment I muted my mic to open my beer. So I was just like, shit, crack it and let's go. And so that's kind of like the big thing. Now, when it also comes with our particular D&D groups, they tend to also either play in a similar vein. Like, I know that
Came back.
Terry does the same sorts of things with her characters, where it's sort of this is how my character would respond, and she plays true to that. So it's never just, this is how she is as a human. Because good God, do I want to punch Beryl.
I know.
Punch her in the throat, because good God. And this is my pacifist. My pacifist wants to punch that character in the throat.
So,
but that's the thing. And, whereas other characters or other players, they kind of tend to kind of play the same archetype throughout. Like, I love Maddie, but Maddie's played the same character in every campaign I've played with him.
I mean, to an extent, yes.
There are huge similarities, because I feel like Maddie starts a character as himself, but
correct.
Like, you know what I mean? So it's just like, this character is me, but, and then there's this thing added on. Whereas other characters who can sort of like really just fall into that character, just like, this is what this character is like, and these are the things that they would do. Because even, again, you look at my sumo, you compare it to my cleric, and even if you compare it to my fucking grifter warlock, these are all very different sides of that sort of same coin, right? So it's just like, they all have their own motivations. They're all very different. It's not just me or me but.
Right. Okay, so you said a lot of really interesting things there. The first thing that you said is you don't really understand alignments. And from a DM's perspective, that was pretty evident in terms of what you were talking about. A lot of what you were talking about was focused on ideals, right? Character ideals, code of ethics, personal codes, things of that nature, right? So when you look at like a chaotic evil character like Jack Sparrow, or you look at a chaotic evil character who's like genuinely evil, it's like, well, there's a lot of different factors that go in there, right? You can have a chaotic evil character that has a code of ethics that makes them sort of seem like a good guy a lot of times, right? And to say that, you look at it from the perspective of like, what does this person look at when they're willing to take a life? What types of things go through their head? That doesn't necessarily link to alignments. So, the problem with D&D alignments, and I'll talk about first D&D alignments as a concept, and then I'll kind of talk about how you handle it as a DM when your players are sort of having a hard time with it. Matt has a hard time with alignment. And I've probably, in our games more than anybody, had conversations with him during the game where I'm just like, your character wouldn't do that. You have this alignment. This is sort of the thing that you have to keep in mind. And then his argument is always, but my character looks at the world like this, or my character does these sort of things, right? And, there's a lot of factors that sort of come into that when you talk about your character. Your character's ideals are separate from your alignment. So your alignment is essentially a way of identifying where on the spectrum you land in terms of the best, the goodest of the good, and the evilest of the evil, right? And so you see, if you just Google D&D alignments and you look at the image search, you'll see like 1,000 D&D alignments where they compare the different alignments to like a ton of different characters. It's actually really confusing.
And that's exactly it. Is like I play D&D, and I would say that 99% of my experience with the alignment are the fucking memes.
Yes. Yeah. No. And that's how most people do it, because that's the best way of sort of grasping the character. But you'll have, Emperor Palpatine in the same slot as other characters that you would say, well, that's not Emperor Palpatine. You know what I mean? Where it's a lawful evil character. D&D alignments are built, like I said, to sort of figure out where you land on the spectrum. It is a guide that is meant to say, in this sort of situation, do you care about the law or do you not, right? Do you care about good or do you not, right? Or are you neutral? And there's a lot of different pieces of it, right? So it's two parts. It's the first letter and the second letter, right?
No. And like you said, I am aware of that, where it's just like the first word, whether it's lawful, neutral, or chaotic, as I understand it, it has to do with how you feel about the laws of the land that exist where you are.
Yes.
And so do you abide by every law, no matter how stupid? Great, you're lawful. do you genuinely not care about the laws and you do what you want, regardless of whether or not the constabulary is going to care? You're chaotic, or are you somewhere in between? And then that second one, again, as I understand it, is about your own moral compass. So if you are a lawful
Good versus evil.
Yeah, good versus evil. So if you are a lawful good character, you are someone that believes intrinsically in the laws of the land and you follow them and you will not break them. But in areas where maybe laws don't apply or they're kind of gray, you are still a good person with a good moral compass. So that's kind of how I get it, and that's why, like I said, I don't think that way when I build my characters. I know sometimes you'll press me and you'll be like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I guess here."
Yeah. So that, again, like, that's the purpose of it. From the perspective of a DM, that table is very outdated, in the sense that from a DM's perspective, it doesn't actually really work well with how players view the game, right? Players create characters in their head. And when they create the characters in their head, dropping them into a box, one of 9, is really, really hard to do, because in different situations, they feel like they would react differently. That is why the vast majority of players are chaotic good, right? Or if they can actually play something different, they'll be chaotic neutral. Because chaotic good means do whatever you want, whenever you want. You're a good person, and you just you do what you think is right, And so a chaotic good character, they don't care about laws. If I'm in some barony run by a tyrant king who's decided that the law says that you're not allowed to wear orange pants, I look at that and I go, they're killing a guy for wearing orange pants. He's just trying to make a fashion statement. I'm not about that, so I'm going to go save his ass, right? Whereas if you were like a lawful good paladin, you would look at that and you would go, but it's the law, and we need to respect the laws. So that first portion of it is relatively straightforward. The second portion of it, good, evil, neutral, is equally straightforward. Trying to put those two things together is not so straightforward. It starts getting really hard, because you might be playing a paladin where you're like, I'm not willing to let this guy die for wearing orange pants. Like, that's fucking horseshit. I would never in a million years, this character would never in a million years watch some dude hang in front of his family for wearing orange pants. I'm not a party to that shit. So then you have a conversation with that person. You go, listen, man, you're not lawful good then. You're chaotic good. And they go, no, I'm not. I'm lawful good. Paladins are lawful good. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who is recently starting a D&D campaign with some of her friends. And she came to me and she goes, hey, I want to make a paladin. What do I do? Right? Tell me about spells. Tell me about paladins. Tell me about all this stuff. And I've done this quite a bit over the last couple of months, especially during the pandemic, where I'll do like little DM classes, or I'll have like sit downs with individual players who know that like I'm a pretty seasoned DM. And we spent about an hour and a half. And at the end of it, she was not playing a paladin anymore, because she did not understand that like the whole point of a paladin is you're sort of the stuck up stick in the mud of the group. You're supposed to be lawful good. You're supposed to do all these things. And when the rogue wants to break into a house, you say no, right? And we eventually transitioned her over to a fighter, because a fighter made more sense. And we developed her backstory and we did all this kind of stuff, right? The problem that a lot of players have is that they can't separate the alignment table with their ideals. And ideals are more influential in your role-playing immersion than the alignment table is. Sometimes I'll force an alignment on somebody, like I did with Matt in the Old and Busted campaign, where I said, like, you're lawful good now. But it's hard to role play that. And a lot of players have a really hard time, especially new players to D&D, have a really hard time role playing alignment, because it's a hard concept to grasp, especially if you're playing with tabletop gamers, because tabletop gamers are about winning. They're about figuring out the puzzle and fucking winning. They're about Patrick Rothfuss bullshit. They're about trying to get the W. And when they say something like, I'll just throw a fireball in the middle of the tavern, you have to go, dude, no, you're not evil. You are not willing to incinerate a bunch of waitresses because you want to finish this fight quickly.
And listen, I feel like I have grown because I even texted you in our last session where I'm like, I see no way that my
Mhm.
character gets out of this alive.
Well,
And I
I've
can
said this about you. You are avidly fixed on your character and what they would do, and you are so unwilling to bend that 3 sessions in, without a fight involved, you are like, I'll probably die here. I'm willing to just die here because this
Yeah.
is what the character would do. These are the sorts of things that make D&D interesting. And character alignment versus ideals is a really, really big part of it.
Listen, 5 years ago, we all throw down in that fucking bar.
Mm-hmm.
We kill the bounty hunter. We kill his shadow hound. We kill a whole lot of fucking innocent people, and we bounce. But I'm just like, this is a guy who has been like tormented with guilt.
Yes.
He's not going to allow another human to be hurt or killed
In another tavern. Yeah, like
in another tavern.
He's
literally this is similar to the market fight. He's going to go quietly. He is racked with guilt. And so I'm just like, yeah, I have no doubt that our murder hobos that eviscerated a Hydra kill this bounty hunter like he's a bitch.
Right, but he's a chaotic good character as a whole. He's not a lawful good character. So why is he doing these things? If his alignment says this, he should absolutely not do that, right? So this is where I talk about the comparisons. Okay, so from a DM's perspective with regards to players, okay? You should not be enforcing alignment in your D&D campaigns unless every single character in the campaign understands alignments. And you shouldn't be addressing it in the middle of games unless it is a really big situation. Little things you should absolutely let slide. If it's a big thing where you feel like the player is taking advantage of the rules or taking advantage of the map or the situation for their benefit against the alignment of their character, absolutely address it. But it will break immersion for everybody playing at the table. That was the word I was looking for earlier. You know, immersion is really important in Dungeons and Dragons. You want people to stay in the moment. You want them to stay in the headspace of their characters, and you want them to stay in the game. And stopping the game to say, listen, dude, your character wouldn't do that. Like, just come on now. Your character wouldn't do that. That's some horseshit. You know, it's going to be a problematic thing. The way that you address it, in my experience, generally is to say, you know, during character creation, I don't really care about your alignment. Doesn't mean anything to me. You play the character however the fuck you want, right? You have your own ideals. You stick to those ideals or you don't stick to those ideals. I don't care. The only time that these things become really, really important is if the story depends on them to be important. You know, if the story that you've built or the story that you're running depends on the fact that the characters need to be good, then you need to enforce it. And you need to make it clear at the beginning of the campaign, at the outset of the campaign. If it doesn't, then who gives a fuck, man? Let them do whatever they want to do. And don't ever bring it up. The only time you should ever bring it up is like after a game where you say, hey man, this is your alignment. This is what you did. I don't really know if that necessarily makes sense. Now I have a hard time with this too, because I will see something and go, hey, you can't do that. That's not your alignment. But it's only ever been in the 2 games where the alignment of your characters were set for a specific purpose, right? And in both cases, it was Matt. And again, I think Matt's a phenomenal role player, and he absolutely can like bend with the story curves that I give him, but he also is a gamer and he will try to win. And so he will come up with ideas, but he won't sort of filter those ideas through the vision of his character, through his character's psyche. He'll just sort of be like, why don't we just kill the guy? And it's like, no, your character wouldn't do that. Remember the whole thing about you don't want to go back to the quarry. You know, this is a touchy subject, and it is a hard thing for a DM to not only enforce, but teach people to understand, which is why I say it's outdated. It doesn't really work in sort of the modern day role-playing environment that we have today, where, you know, you can watch Critical Role or you can watch Dimension 20 or the Adventure Zone or whatever, and then, you know, point to that character and go, that's not what that character would do. His alignment's this. He would never do that, because it doesn't fucking matter. Those characters are being played by those players. And whatever those players decide that those characters would do, that's it. That's what happens. Maybe afterwards you have to go up to the person and say, hey man, we're going to need to change your alignment because you're not lawful good. Like the things you've been doing, they are not lawful good things. So we're going to change your alignment. Sometimes the rules are affected by alignment, but it's so rare that it just doesn't matter that much. So if it's not something that you are very clear about at the beginning of your campaign, or if it's not something that a really experienced role player who understands the alignments and understands ideals and understands all of these things can manage on their own, just don't bother. Let them do what they want to do. And then after the session, tap them on the shoulder and say, hey man, you're making a lot of decisions that don't line up with this thing. Maybe we need to just make a change, right? And that makes sense in terms of storytelling. For storytelling, good characters go bad. They start out good and they change. Versa. Yeah, well, exactly.
That was one of the things that I also wanted to say, like, as a character, where it's just like, don't be afraid to change your alignment if that character goes through some shit that would make them change their alignment.
For sure.
Like, if, so for example, in our Old and Busted campaign, I know our sort of session 0 was, us all just kind of sort of riffing off and making shit up for each other. And again, I'm super excited to see both A, will this character survive our next session, and B, all about this character's backstory, because we're basically just, anyway.
I'll put it to you like this, Nathan, because we were supposed to play tonight, but we are not. But just to give you a little taste of what's to come, the prosecutor will not be going easy on you. His intention is the death sentence. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and again, like, even as I said to you, because I'm just like, this character has been so racked with guilt that he's actually relieved to finally have been arrested and face justice and have resolution. And it's not just, like, even then, and it's so funny because, again, the way we've been playing this campaign is whenever everyone else says things about my character, I just kind of pull it in and take it and just run with it. Like, that is how the character. So it was actually when Jordan was just like, yeah, but he's the nicest idiot possible. He's gonna pick the summer court. He's gonna plead guilty. And so I was just like, I choose the summer court. I plead guilty. Yeah. Like
he's the most honorable person among this bunch of idiots here. Like, yeah, like. And I think that's what's fun about this campaign is everybody is willing to sort of flex their characters in different directions. And that's also why I wasn't harping really hard on alignments for a lot of characters. But from a DM's perspective, to go back to the original question is like sort of how do you enforce it? It's not how do you enforce it. It's you have to decide whether or not you need to enforce it or you want to enforce it. If you are writing your own campaign and that campaign is dependent on all of the characters being good people, good characters, you tell your players at the beginning of that campaign. When we did the Elemental campaign and it started, I sat down with all of you guys. I said, your character has to be good.
Yeah.
They cannot be an evil character because this campaign doesn't work with evil characters. We are playing a campaign where every character is good. And I expect you to be good based on these things. And for the Old and Busted campaign, we didn't have that conversation. I didn't say you had to be good. I just said you're adventurers because it didn't matter within the scope of the storytelling of the campaign. If you had decided, if Terry had decided that Lily was evil, she could have absolutely gone that road. There was nothing to stop her from going that road. It was perfectly reasonable for her to say, well, her character's going to be good, but like chaotic good, I'm playing a campaign right now that we just started with some friends of mine where I get to play LaRuska, my potion merchant. He's neutral. I play him like Quark.
Nice.
Like this character is not good or evil. He doesn't see the world as good or evil. He just sees the world as it is, and when it comes to laws, he doesn't really care about them. He uses them when he needs to use them. He ignores them when he needs to ignore them. And he doesn't mind if people break them. And he doesn't care if people decide to do it. He just sort of looks at the world from this sort of it is what it is perspective. I'm just here to do business and make money and do all of these things. And that's sort of what makes him, interesting. Is he good? Yes. But there are times when he's absolutely not good. But that is based on his ideals, right? That's where you have to bring in your character's ideals to say, this is how my ideals are modifying this neutral alignment, right?
Mm-hmm.
His ideals make him a pleasant person who's generally good, right? But that doesn't mean he's lawful good or chaotic good or whatever, where he's going to always side with good. He will, at times, side with evil, because that is the character that he is built around. But if you compare him to a robot, where it's true neutral, he's absolutely not a robot, right? So these two things have to be taken in tandem. It's possible that with this question, the player that he is referring to, has this alignment, but there's an ideal that contradicts the alignment. And that's why there's fluctuation in terms of roleplay. So you need to understand that with your player. So have that conversation with your player.
No, and really, it's so funny, because how many of these have we done, and how many of them come down to you just need to talk to your character out of the game. Yeah, you just got to talk to the player out of the game. Also, I will have you know that I have finally, despite all of the fucking insanity in the world, gotten my other side stuff, and you promised that if I DM, you will play. So
100%. I
am reading through it now.
Wonderful. No, hey, I'm excited for it. I'm excited anytime I get to play as a player. Since the last time we recorded, I have party wiped my warlock party. They're all dead now, and that game is over for now. I may come back to them again in the future because there is a hook for possible resurrection. But when we got to that point, it was the weirdest fucking thing ever, and it was meant to be funny. And I'd like to tell you about it. So, we have these 3 warlocks. They're idiots. They're fuck-ups. They used to be clerics, and they decided to sell their power to the dark gods to become warlocks. So they signed their soul over to the Queen of Air and Darkness, and they got power from different deities through an intermediary that essentially acted as a broker. And then he would send them on missions and all this kind of stuff. As they started to gain more power, they were getting up to like level 9 and stuff like that. They really wanted to go for the big game. And the way that I had structured this campaign was we would do one section where they would follow a story, and it would be very heavily based around dungeon type stuff. So like pre-written campaigns and campaigns that I had created myself. But a lot of one-shots strung together. And then in between all of those, we would do 3 or 4 sessions of just open D&D, where I had nothing planned or prepped, and we would just get together, and I would say, what would you guys like to do? And I would sort of scramble to get things ready so that they could get all this stuff together. One of the things that they decided to do was break into the estate of one of the characters' fathers, who's a cleric who has all of these ancient and powerful religious artifacts. They want to break into his vault, and they want to get that shit, and they want to get out. So I designed the map in Dungeon Fog. I put all the stuff together. I wrote all the characters. I wrote all the NPCs. I built all the background. And then they decided they didn't want to do that, and they went off on another quest. And I was like, all right, fuck. So then we finished that quest, and they come back, and I was like, what do you guys want to do? And they go, it's time to break into this house. I was like, fucking let's go for it. So we have a couple fun sessions, some planning sessions, and then we go through the actual process of them breaking into this place. So they break into the manor. They get past the wards to get into the vault. They go downstairs into the basement of the vault, and there's this big room with all these crazy items in it, rolling for all these wacky items. They get a bunch of amazing things. But I was in a position where I was like, this is boring. Like, I want to do something fun here. Like, I really want to fuck with these guys, right? So what I basically did is they got down through the first vault door. They went into the basement. In the huge vault, they got all of these amazing magic items. But what they see is that there's another vault door in this vault. And of course, immediately they're like, but what's behind that door? So I've got all these codes and these different things that they have to figure out. He eventually, they end up beating his father unconscious and like getting a bunch of information out of them. And then while they're trying to figure out the other door, one of the warlocks, because they're all evil, slices his father's throat, and his father bleeds out and dies. So they eventually figure out the door, and they open it, and on the other side of the door is a huge sex dungeon full about 16 to 17 people in various states of fucking. And I've got a big picture of a sex dungeon, and at this point is when I cue the ambience, because you know me as a DM, I like ambience. This is also when I found out that YouTube has a wide library of sex and porn sounds that you can play. So I've got like, oh baby, like nonstop. And they are just fucking halted in their tracks by what they see. And I'm laughing my ass off because they just don't know what the fuck to do. And at the back of the sex dungeon is another vault door. So they're trying to figure out the vault door. And the whole time I'm just playing the sex ambience. And it's mostly female sexy noises, right? Half of this party's gay, I think. At least one of them is. Jordan was part of this party. And Jordan says to me, he's like, this is all woman sounds, man. This isn't very inclusive. So this is when I find out that YouTube has a wide library of gay sounds for sex. And I immediately switched to Guy Gets Hard Ass Pounding Volume 3. Oh, fuck. Oh, baby. And again, roleplay comes to a fucking halt as like they're trying to solve a puzzle while this is playing in the background. At one point, they're talking and all three of them just stop talking and they're just like dead silent for like a solid 20 seconds. At which point I need to turn the ambience off because I was like, I can't, I'm at my limit. Like, let's get to the game here. I'm sure you guys can imagine. One guy was like, yeah, it's burned into my mind at this point. So they open the other door, and what they find on the other door is a giant elder brain trapped in an eldritch symbol sitting there floating over the ground. Behind it is yet another door. They open that door, and they find a god egg, which was like the thing that they were supposed to try to get at the end of the last campaign, but failed to get. So this is like the big prize. The Queen of Air and Darkness wants it. They really fucking want it. So they are having this big conversation where the one guy's like, guys, we got a lot of good shit. Let's just get the fuck out of here. The other guy says, yeah, but like all the good stuff we got's just going to get sent to the Queen. If we bring this thing in, we'll get to keep all the good shit. And then somebody else is like, dude, we just need a win. Let's just get this thing and go. While they're having this conversation, the little fish boy, the Kuotoa, he goes and sneaks back and tries to get the egg out. And he's like rolling it out because it's like 5 feet tall, giant golden egg. And of course it sets off the trap. And then the elder brain wakes up and they have to have this big fight with the elder brain. So we have the big fight with the elder brain. And every time they hit the elder brain, in their head, they hear, oh yeah, baby, harder. And I kept that up throughout the entirety of the fight, not knowing that it was so uncomfortable to hear me make like sexy nose where I was like, oh, you're just like your daddy. And like to the point where they stopped attacking it and doing damage to it. And it killed all three of them, which then became very awkward because it was sort of a rapey vibe that was not intentional. So they died. And after that was done, I was like, you know what, guys? I think this campaign is done for now. I think I need a break. Either we start something new and I DM something new, but if somebody else wants to DM something, I'm more than happy to hear it. But it was the weirdest, like BDSM, like sex brain with like a sex dungeon. They were like throwing fireballs into the sex dungeon because they thought if they killed the people having sex that would like depower the brain. It was awful. It was just a complete clusterfuck in every sense of the word. And I'll never forget
it. Well, I hope my trial isn't like that.
No, I don't think I'm going to go that way for a while yet. I typically avoid that sort of stuff, but I was like, you know what? I really want to fuck with these guys now because like they've been really stringing me along in terms of like saying, here's what we'll do next session. And then I prep for it and then they'll change their minds at the beginning of the session. So they did that enough times where I was like, no, they're doing this. Like this, I'm going to make it so enticing they can't not do it. And there was like a whole story about what was going on and what they were doing and what the brain was for and what the wards were for and what these other things were for and everything that was going on. But they at no point figured that out because they killed all of the people who knew anything about it and really didn't interrogate anybody and just sort of like did their own thing. This is the epitome of a group with no leader. all evil. It's just they had no business surviving as long as they did. They had no business surviving to level 9. But it was so awkward, but I stuck to it the whole way. Oh man. I don't know what else to say, but
I was going to say the depths that you discover your DM is capable of.
I was like, it can't just be a vault with some shit in it. You know, like I thought about having like, oh, it's the pinwheel that, you know, you had as a kid. It turns out your father loved you the whole time or some shit like that, you know, like some Inception nonsense. Like there was tons of stuff that I was going through my head, and then I eventually settled on like, no, behind the first door is a sex dungeon. And then after that, everything just goes fucking crazy. It's just buck wild nonstop. And it played out as good as I could have imagined and in the most horrific way it possibly could have played out. But I get to play my alchemist character now, so I'm having a good time with it. All right, Nathan. Cool. That has been Jaded Gamercast for this week. My name is... Wait, what? Oh my God, I'm drunk. How do I end it? That has been Jaded Gamercast.
For this week.
That has been Jaded...
His name is Lang.
That has been Jaded Gamercast for this week. My name is Lang.
I'm Nathan.
Have a good one.
Cheers.
Cheers. I brain farted on that one. Like you do not even understand how my whole upper like functions, all my systems. All right, I need to drink some water.